Buyers broke to new highs but were met with selling soon after. So, did sellers create meaningful damage, or are buyers just consolidating the gains? And what do they need to do next week in order to stay constructive? My name is Lamont, full-time trader, part of the Chart Guys team, where I head up our futures room and the swing report. In this video, we'll cover all of that and more. So let's get into it. All right, so starting off with SPY here. So like we discussed, we did break to a new all-time high, but selling right off of the gap up. So we gapped up, not that big of a gap, and it was into blue sky. So you would think these buyers would make an attempt at pressing the issue here, but they didn't. So not the best situation, right? Obviously, not really, um, not the most momentum off this break, but the low of the day was set pretty much right off the back test of the breakout point, right? So the breakout point, 667.34. As long as they're holding over that, they're affirming this breakout that was on October 1st. And again, the low of the day was pretty much a drop and pop there. And then you get strength again on Friday. Again, you get strength again on Friday. And so, but again, met with selling, right? This was kind of late day liquidation break, kind of later in the session here. It was more like in the middle of the session here. Yeah, I was thinking in the afternoon, we get a bit of a liquidation break here. And, it looks bad, but value still was overlapping to higher. Like it's hard to ignore that amount of selling, but as of right now, these buyers are technically still constructive from a session to session perspective. The majority of the volume moved higher. That's just this blue area here. And so it's kind of similar to this, right? Where you had this strength selling for most of the day, but you end up holding over the end of the day structure from the prior session. And so value continuing to move higher. It's not as clean of a break, right? Like this is a little bit better of a situation because the value areas, right? This big blue chunk over here is pretty much perfectly over this big blue chunk, whereas there's a significant amount of overlap here, right? All of this area over here is overlapped. So it's not quite the same, but what do these buyers need to get done next week in order to stay constructive? Again, it's just a hold over 667.34. Now, another way of looking at this, right, is okay, yeah, the value is now overlapping to higher, but on the daily time frame, they haven't backtested this breakout point yet. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if we were to see some more selling, right? Because the Qs, it's very pretty notable to sell from the high of the day to make a new low of the day. Essentially, it's a bearish engulfing candle. I don't know if the engulfing needs to be a Maribozo. I don't think so. So this is technically a bearish engulfing because it did break to a new high over Thursday's high and then broke to a new low. But we'll get to that in a second. So I wouldn't be surprised, right? And if we do happen to see further selling next week, I'm kind of looking at all of this now as one big block of demand. And so if they can hold over 662.67, if then that would still affirm this structure as demand and keep these buyers positioned well for new highs. So that's really it. I think we can keep, I still think it's reasonable to be recycling these trade zones, right? Like however we had them set up before, all of these guys before. I still think make a lot of sense. So you can just kind of apply the same concept here now. I'll just steal this guy. So like here, it's the same idea. If we retrace down into this guy, but hold here, don't negate this breakout point. Like let's say that this is just one big chop. Like let's say that we haven't yet have like a clear balance area over this structure yet. So like let's say it looks something like this in the future. This would all still be like constructive relative to this. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking for a trade zone then something like this makes wait, hold on. Is this a new monthly? I think it is, yeah. Something like this, targeting the monthly R1, pivot back test for the month, covering this breakout point. I don't hate that. Something like this makes a lot of sense in my opinion. There's not a lot of volume here though, so maybe, I don't know, maybe something like this might be a little bit better. We'll see if we can go, what, like 4 for 4 or whatever on these zones. I'm not sure. 3 for 3. We'll see if we can go 3 for 3. Off of this third zone. We had some more in here, I believe, but yeah, so there's actually quite a lot. 4 4 4 would it be? 1 2, whatever, this doesn't matter. So let's see here. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, so space for a daily higher low. I know there's a dinky daily higher low over here, but I would say anything over 654.41 will be good for one. And on the weekly time frame, anything over 634.92 gonna be good for one. All right, so moving on to the Qs. I think the Qs is like pretty interesting, right? So for the Qs, like I said, that liquidation break was definitely more severe. Value is overlapping still, right? The big blue chunk, it's overlapping, but it's kind of engulfing the prior day, and value did move lower. So in the ES, we had value overlapping to higher, right? This big chunk over here is above this big this blue chunk over here. For the Qs, it's completely sideways, and we have some value develop lower. So not ideal. Additionally, on the hourly time frame, there is a lot of space now for potential lower high, but that's not the first time that's happened. And on the daily time frame, it doesn't look that bad, right? So the low of the day. So first of all, if you'll notice on Thursday, what are these sellers trying to do, right? After this big gap up starts you up over here, gapping up over this breakout point 602.87, their goal would be to negate this gap. And they did negate the gap, but they also, their next goal then would be to negate this breakout, which they needed to get under here in order to do so. And the low of the day was actually a near miss to get down there. And then on Friday, the low of the day was set right off of the value area high of this local area of demand. So, as bad as that looked session to session, and it wasn't that bad, value was still overlapping. Next week, if that can be the low, then value is still moving higher relative to this local daily demand. And that would pretty much be the best case scenario for the buyers. And, I think even if you do see some weakness in the Qs here, if you pop on over to XLF and XLV, which are the other, major sectors, XLF is still just holding up at the highs, and XLV just made a major breakout over like 6 months of balance. So if XLV were to just keep holding over 140.79, and if XLF just kind of hangs out doing more of this, the Qs can probably take a little bit of a breather as well, and the overall market, despite the ES, probably you're not going to see that all out selling. So we'll see. I think there's still the potential that we're seeing some rotation in the markets, and it looks like the market really just cares primarily about rate cuts, and so if that's the case, then weakening labor market would increase that potential. Runaway inflation would decrease that potential. So that's really what the market cares about. And right now, we're not going to get any government data for a while. We're going to have to depend on private data. So a little bit more of elevated uncertainty. But if you look back historically, the market doesn't really care about shutdowns. Like the government shutdowns doesn't really care about that so much. So we'll see. Anyway, so let's see. Trade zones. I think bottom fishing off the monthly pivot, playing to the monthly R1, using these guys as a reference makes a lot of sense. So if we do happen to see some deeper retracements, something along these lines, trying to play up to here. I think very reasonable. Some along these lines. All right. So that's it. Moving on to the Qs. To the right here. The red, as is tradition, broke to a new high and then began some retracement here. So struggling to hold on to this breakout over 247.18, but at the same time, holding over this prior all-time high structure is a pretty good look, right? So if you think about it, last time we were here, and it's very similar to when this occurred, breakout over this guy, and they battled for it for a while, and then eventually they rolled back down under it. And if I draw the point of control or mark it up, then we can see how a price kind of responds to this area, and then eventually it rolls under the point of control over here, and then that's really when things go south. So as of right now, if we zoom out, fast forward to today, there's actually quite a lot more acceptance over the point of control of the new all-time high structure. So this actually looks okay. And remember, actually, that we didn't talk about that yet, but last week, this was quite notable. What the sellers wanted to get done last week was to just keep holding under the point of control, just like, what we just showed you back here, right? When was it, pretty much over for these buyers over here is when they rejected from this. I know it's kind of hard to see right now with this one. Hang on, let me hide this new one. There we go. Gotta rename this guy. All right, so I'll move this up here so I don't lose it. I've already lost it, almost. All right, so when was it kind of over for these buyers on the attempt over here to break over the prior all-time high supply? It was when they popped back down under the point of control, couldn't find their way back over it over here, and then they rolled over. So they initially hold this point of control, reject from the value area high, get all the way to the other side of the range, lower high off the point of control, and then it's a wrap. So that's what we're looking out for now. If these sellers are going to be in business here, they got to do the same exact thing, except now with this new structure. So we can kill this guy again. We don't need that guy. Bring this fella back. And what they need to do is lower high, drill, and then make a lower high somewhere under this point of control, and then roll over, take out the low of the structure, and then we'll know, okay, the rut is still not ready to break out. So even though we have this higher high lacking follow through, it's really not, it's not over yet for these buyers, because again, they reject from the value area high. This should have been the go sign under the point of control to try to get here. Then you get another open under that point of control, and they fail again to try to cut down here. And so as long as these buyers can hold over 240.88, they will affirm this all-time high, this prior all-time high structure as demand, and then they'll be positioned well for new highs. All right. Weekly stair step, lots of space for a higher low over this dinky one, 231.47. If you kind of view this as one move, which I'm kind of leaning more sort towards that, then anything over 212.34 is going to be good for that higher low. Okay. We have a trade zone? I don't remember. I think not for a while now. For the rut, I think, you know, playing off the lows of this guy, not bad, right? Like something like this. Trying to get back, basically just looking for more balance, right? Basically just looking for chop, right? Like further balance like this. So just resuming this, that's kind of what this setup would be for. Alrighty. Oops, moving on then to the Dow. All right, so the Dow in the trade zone and out to the target now, way above the target. So at this point, I would just, you know, hope you're probably taking your profits already. So at this point, just walk your stop up to under this guy. And if we can just balance and break out again, then you just walk that stop up. Now, daily higher low and higher high, space for a higher low over 460.84. I think reasonable to just kind of view all of, actually, I don't know. It's not a very convincing breakout yet. And it's pretty high volume on that selling. Yeah, you know what? I don't feel terribly comfortable doing a reload anywhere higher yet. I would say recycling this zone, looking for further bounce like this, similar to the rut, is probably the best bet in the short term for the Dow. So hopefully we can go 3 for 3 on the Dow setups. But I would just keep recycling this zone, basically. Yeah. Moving on to the dollar. So the dollar still just shopping around. Again, I stand by both of these trade zones. This fella's already gone to target. This guy is, you know, trying its best to work here. As long as these buyers can hold over this level, 97.455, then they're affirming this breakout from September 24th, which should then have these buyers trying to get to the other side of all of this chop over here. All right, still stand by both these trade zones. If you rotate back up here, I think you can recycle this. Like the dollar has the propensity to balance for very extended periods of time. So for all we know, we're looking at like some kind of this lengthy period of balance, except now under this guy, which was supportive of price throughout all of this upper balance, and now over this guy, which is currently being problematic for these sellers here. Excuse me, for the sellers here. All right. So space for a higher low, anything over 96.835 will be good for one. Potentially setting a lower high here at 97.825 if next week the sellers can break 97.290. But you know, ultimately what I care primarily about is just all of this balance and the two structures that's containing all this balance. Moving on to gold. So gold looks totally fine. Yeah, there's a daily no change level 379.1.255. All of this consolidation of this breakout from September 29th is totally fine, right? If you can't get back under here, this breakout is affirmed. Space for a daily higher low over 3717.520. Potentially setting that here at 3819.425 if next week these buyers can break over 3891.76. I mean, I would be surprised if we you know, I would imagine weekly retracement is coming sooner rather than later. It's actually not a huge percent move. It looks like a monster move, and it's certainly a monster move if we trade futures or one of the leveraged ETFs. But even like one of our recent swing report picks, like MU, ripped way more percentage wise than this. Anyway, yeah, it looks like a monster move, but it's only 14%. So that's it. When I should say weekly retracement comes, anything over 3311.56 will be good for another weekly higher low. And really, I care about this big chunk. You know, like we could retrace 10% and still be healthy in the weekly time frame, affirming this breakout. All right, moving on to NVDA. So NVDA new highs, and that's pretty notable. This back test over here so far did not even get back down to. This should really be here now. So this retracement so far does not even negate this breakout, right? So the sellers, they should be trying to get back to here. This was actually the highest point here, 184.55. So super healthy. Let me see what the. I guess we could be looking up at the R2 for the year. So that's up here. 217.07. I'll change this to a 2 here. All right, so I was looking for a back test of this guy, and I still think that that might be in the cards in the future. But for now, as long as this breakout is persisting, I think we can use this structure now as our zone and look to come up to the R2. So even if it takes a while to set up, I think something along these lines, right, covering our high volume areas, covering this R1, and trying to play up to the R2, you know, obviously we'll take some profits before then, like potentially at this monthly R1, something like that. Pretty reasonable, I think, for NVDA in the short term. And then the extended target is, of course, going to be that yearly R2 level, something along these lines. Lots of space for a higher low. Anything over 173.13 will be good for one. Weekly time frame, space for a higher low as well. Anything over 164.07, good for one. All right. Moving on to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, like I was saying last week, I thought it was very reasonable to recycle this trade zone. This is very similar concept to what I was talking about regarding the rut and the Dow, right? So on the rut, I'm thinking, you know, looking out for further balance like this, using this as a key structure. It's the same concept here, right? Like, why did I think it was pretty reasonable to keep recycling this trade zone last week? Because there was the potential that we're just still balancing over this guy. And if we are still balancing over this guy, then I don't know if you can hear this meowing. He's throwing a little fit here. Then it was still healthy, right? Any retracement consolidation that was still holding over this structure was fine. So I thought it was reasonable to recycle this trade zone. That worked out quite well at this point now. So, you know, at this point, you should be out at least half of this trade. And you can walk your stop up to under this low. And then wait for the potential for these buyers to do something like this, ideally hold over the point of control of this prior to all-time high structure. And then break out again. Okay, great. Then you can walk your stop up. But for now, I would just, you know, take your profits, leave your stop under here, give it some leash to work. If you've not taken any profits, then maybe walk your stop up to under like kind of this middle structure here, or even the low of this guy, like here. It's pretty much the same level. All right, but I personally would suggest chop it up, walk your stop, leave your stop to here, and then wait for that potential balance and breakout before walking it again. All right, lots of space for additional higher low. Anything over 108.623.70 is going to be good for one. Weekly time frame, same dealio. It's that low. It's the same low for the weekly time frame. All right, there's not really that much space for a potential weekly higher low yet either. So, shall see. Moving on to Ethereum. Ethereum, same dealio. Came into the trade zone just to the tip of it or so, but got to target. Again, this was just based off of looking for this structure to continue being affirmed as demand. And for this fella, this old reference here, which was very effective here, very effective here, very effective here for sellers, looking for that to kind of flip here and be effective for buyers, which it was over here, and now it has been over here as well. So again, I would pull these lower orders, walk your stop up to under here, take your profit, walk your stop up to under here, wait for some potential chop and break out before walking your stop up again. Lots of space for a higher low. I don't really care about this Thinky one. I would say anything over 3825 even is going to be good for that daily higher low. This is a notable failure to not touch the point of control of the prior all-time high structure. This is just this guy over here. So very notable failure to not touch there now, but as of right now, sellers really haven't done any damage. So, you know, the onus is still very much on sellers to prove something here. Okay, finally CCJ. Again, like backtesting off of this guy is what a momentum trader is doing, and like it's worked out quite well so far, but I would still just prefer to look for it back here just because, you know, you just look back and, you know, there was plenty of hype in uranium throughout all of this run, and it still gave you a bunch of chops. So I personally am just leaning towards looking for a backtest of this guy, even if we don't get it this time around. Like let's say a new range establishes much higher, we can still look for a setup like this later after we see this guy, for example, like some new key structure, hold price here, hold price here. Great, then we can move this structure up. But I mean, this trade zone up. But for now, I'm still just sticking with this personally. All right, so that's it. For trade review, should be pretty fast. Didn't take that many trades this week. It was let's see, for the rut here. What? Hang on a second. Oh, it's the ES for the ES. Okay. But I didn't do my homework. All right, so for the ES here, this was on 9. What the hell? Oh, there it is. Okay. So on the ES, I bought the ES after the Y-val hold looking for balance. All right, so that was 9:30 was this day, and we did get balance. Okay, I remember. All right, so on 9:30 on this day, this was here. The daily context is this. And we got an open pretty much at the like pretty much in the middle of yesterday's range, or the prior day's range. So here's the open here. Hang on, why aren't the references showing? The open was right here, and you initially failed to get to the point of control. That's not ideal, but if you look at here, right, what is this day? This day was fill, right? It's a gap up, and then they filled the gap, but they couldn't get through this end of the day structure, and that was just carrying over into this day. So the potential of us to balance, right, just keep balancing over this guy, which would be constructive relative to this session, was pretty decent in my opinion, right? So we open up in the middle of range and value, kind of gives little indication for early trade. But the first opening drive lower, all it does is get you to the value area low, and then you start chopping sideways. So I was thinking it's pretty cheap here to try a buy over the developing point of control and look to get back to the open. It was 1.5R, only three points, and so that was the play. So I buy that, pass back at 940, chop it up at 944. Yeah, chop it up at 944. And then I stopped the rest out on this move. And honestly, I should have just kept playing off of the value area low. There were some decent setups. Even this setup was pretty cheap to get back to the open. It was same idea pretty much. Even better R. That would have been fine. This one would have been fine. Like this one's probably too costly here. This one's probably too costly. That one's actually it's not. That one's totally fine too. But this one was even better, even cheaper. Good R. That was a decent setup. I think you would have to pass on these. These are okay. This is cheap enough to try to play back to the open. So actually, you know, the location made a lot of sense playing off the value area low, but you know, during the middle of the session, I just kind of switch gears and do other stuff. So I just did that, and that was it. And then on 10-1, bought the RTY, pass over the overnight high. Oh, right, the scalp. Okay, I remember. So for the rut on this day, it was this. Yeah, so on this day, what I was observing was that we had pretty much a like a double top. It was right here on this candle, 38, right? So I'm saying I'm eyeing the RTY IWM at the daily point of control. So I'm talking about like the daily context first. And the daily context is this, right? We are opening up pretty much right smack dab at that daily point of control. And so what happened was by a little bit into the session, we had already seen we were over the open, right? So a little bit into the session here, we're over the open, right? We did not hold under the point of control, so the sellers were not strong there. And then you reject right from the overnight high, which is short-term sellers, right? Like that's short-term operators, right? Big money doesn't wait to sell at a key level. So whenever you see a rejection at the level to the tick, you know that's day traders like you and I, right? And so you can kind of put yourself in their shoes. Okay, well, what if we make a new high? What are they going to do? They're going to bail. And so if they're going to bail, what should happen is the next key day time frame reference should be tested. That should be their goal at least. And who knows if it gets there, but that should be the goal. I was greedily playing for the regular trading hours high for the next chop, so I don't get it. But I got the first chop here at the point of control. So first exit was, let's see, buying, blah, 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 bummer. Okay, so I missed this 443.5 backtest. That's here. All right, I missed this backtest play here. I put up a limit order and it just didn't get there, so I don't get that one. But I'm still looking to go with the buyers. And whatever, I missed another one. Should have just blah, blah, blah. I'm just lamenting missing here. And then I said at 9:37, I'm saying the high of the day at the moment, overnight high to the tick, likely short-term operator. So that's what I was talking about, right? Like that's the context that's setting up for a potential trade. And so I say I'm interested in buying the overnight high break for a scalp to the yesterday's point of control. So I put that order in as like a stop buy. And here's the move to the point of control. And I just gave it a little bit of, I didn't give it much reach at all. I had my stop under this candle, right? Because the idea is it should rush there. So this is the buy. You buy it over this break, and it should rush to the next day time frame reference. So I figure, leave it under the Depop under this candle, because if it rolls over right away, then I'm wrong, right? It's not doing what I want to do. I want it to dash right to the next target. So put the stop under there. I chopped it up, and then I was looking for the regular trading hours high for more, but I did acknowledge the prior day's close was right under it. So if it's not going to get to the regular trading hours high, it's probably going to fail at the PDC. And it did fail at the PDC. And because we had data coming out in 3 minutes, so I just chopped it up at 9:42 at the development value area high, seeing this like struggle here, chopped it up there instead, and then I stopped out the rest. And then that was it for a while. And then at 9:56, I talked about missing another setup here at 43.5. I missed this one. Yeah, 9:53, because I was texting my wife Pokemon gifs, and so I'm just joking about that. And then whatever, there's data in 2 as well, so I don't mind waiting for the data to shake out. And then I tried it again at 10 a.m. The 10 a.m. is this candle over here. It's the same exact setup off of 43.5. So that's why I mentioned the 43.5 back here. Here I mentioned this 43.5, bomber missing it, because it's still good to put in your brain that, okay, that's the location though, right? And why do we care about 43.5? 43.5 is just here. It's just the low of this chop over here, right? So think about it. The breakout point is here. It's easier to see on this chart. 43.5 is this low, right? And on that day, we opened up over this breakout point. Here's the open that we're doing all this action, right? And if we're going to affirm this breakout, we have to hold over this guy. So the sellers, if they start in between these 2 levels, the goal for the sellers, get under here. The goal for the buyers, get over here. So that becomes a key location as long as we're not under here if you want to be a buyer. You know what I mean? Like that's the logic of it all. Additionally, this was a failure on the daily time frame to hold under the point of control. At this point in time, we're like hanging around right above it. So let's see, blah, blah, blah. And I just explained all of that here. And bigger picture, it's a battle for that daily point of control after the drop in pop yesterday. And then I chop it up at 10:03. I think it makes me wait for quite a bit. Yeah, it makes me wait for quite a bit here. 10:03, I'm sorry, I chopped it up here at 10:03. And I was just looking for an exit under 48.8, because this is the high, a higher high over this high that just failed. And so if these buyers are going to have problems advancing, I don't know if they're going to have problems, but if they are going to have problems, it should be here, because they already have problems here. You know what I mean? So chop it up, and then took another chop of the Diva, I think. Yeah, I chopped it at 03, and then I'm looking for more out at Diva. I called that out at 10:08. I called that out at 10:03. I called that out. So pretty much right when I get this exit, I call out, okay, I'm looking for another exit over here. I kick more out at the Diva. And then if I fail the overnight high, blah, blah, blah. And then later in the session at like 2:55, I say, all right, I'm out the rest at the daily value area high, because at that point, remember, this play is for here, right? We're thinking we're going with buyers because the sellers couldn't hold under the point of control. And if they can't hold under the point of control, then where are they going to try to go? They're going to try to go to the value area high, you know? So when the market gets there at the end of the session, and then I just end up closing it, and then I rolled half of those proceeds into 243, 245 calls. So 243, 245, because I figure, all right, if they're going to advance again into the next day, they probably have problems here, right? You probably run into problems at the prior all-time high. Now, if that didn't happen, they actually blow past it on the gap up. But because I started seeing this weakness, rolling back down under this high, I just closed out 3 of 5 of the spreads at 125. That's like, I don't remember exactly when, but it was showing us a little bit of weakness. 125, somewhere in here. So we fell back down under it. I'm seeing this, lower high trying to form under that all-time high, prior all-time high. So I just bailed on some of that, booked some more profits, and then I'm just holding a couple as a runner into next week. But at this point, it's a pretty negligible position. And that is it. Yeah, that is it. So whatever, pretty solid week from just a few trades. And that is pretty much it. I feel like I could have got some better trades in this morning, but I had to do some moderating. It's not my favorite part of the job by any means. But, it has to be done because, well, got to keep the room orderly or whatever. Anyways, if you got any value out of that and wouldn't mind hitting us with a like or subscribe, we would appreciate it very much. Costs you nothing, helps us out a lot. And if you're interested in getting trade ideas sent to your inbox every week, update from me, update from Dan, live updates for any trades that we take, check out the stream report, links in the description below. There have been some absolute bangers lately. MU, like I said, was just huge. Would have paid for many years, likely, if you trade with any amount of size. We were wrong on this idea. Dan and I were looking for a weekly lower high. That didn't form, but we flipped the script and then played for the higher low, and that was an absolute banger. Apple was a good one recently as well. This was the trade zone that we set up for it. It's, done pretty well. We're still in RTX. Bunch of goodies. Obviously, they're not all goodies, but, the ones that work way more. And the hit rate, honestly, is pretty good for the ones that I actually end up trading. I don't trade all the trade ideas because 2 a week adds up pretty quickly. 100 trade ideas a year. That's a lot. But when I do take a trade, I walk you through every single step of it, not necessarily so we can copy trade, but so that you can see the thought process through it and then develop your own approach to it, right? Just, looking at how we make decisions, why make the decisions, and then, you can take it from there, or you can, whatever, copy, that's fine too. I'll very oftentimes call ahead of time what I'm looking to get done, just like I do in these, updates for our chat room. And if you want to join a chat room, trade alongside a bunch of, full-time traders, have a sense of community, bounce ideas off of people, just shoot the shit sometimes. Check out the community, links in the description below. I probably shouldn't have said shit. Anyway, appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for sharing some of your time and energy with me. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I hope to see you all next time. Farewell.